welcome to Authenticity Unleashed. I'm your host, Pam Rader, and I'm so grateful to be here with you all today. I hear a lot of talk about happiness, or rather, the lack of happiness that people feel. In fact, whenever I ask people, what do you really want in life when they come into my coaching practice or a program, they often say, I just want to be more happy. But the problem is that we have this common belief that happiness is something we can achieve through external means. Maybe it's through like buying things or landing the perfect job or even seeking praise from others. Research this, like happiness has been researched over and over again in so many areas. And research shows that only 10% of our happiness is actually determined by external circumstances. So you can keep buying the new car and getting the new things, but only 10% of the experience of happiness comes from that stuff. 90% of your happiness comes from our mindset, our behavior, and then our genetics. I think we've all had an experience like this. I'm going to take you way back to when I was 19 years old and not as smart as maybe I am today. And I really badly wanted to have this red RX-7 car. It was I think it was a Mazda RX-7. And it was so cool. Now, the car was a rebuild and it was like internally a piece of crap. It looked good on the outside. And everybody told me I shouldn't buy it, including my dad. But I begged my dad to co-sign the loan, and I was so excited. And when he agreed against his better judgment, I got the car and I drove around. And for a few days, I felt really cool. And then I had to make my first car payment. And then all I felt every moment that I owned that car was stress because I thought it might break down. I had to make these payments on it. I didn't really care that it was cool anymore. And then I went on to wanting some, leather pants or some other stupid thing that I wanted when I was 19. But we all have some version wanting the thing and believe that when we get the thing, our lives will somehow be better and we will be happy. But that happiness is always fleeting. You might work really hard to get a promotion or a new house or a new car or a new job or a new girlfriend or boyfriend or husband or wife. And you believe that when you finally reach that position or you get that thing, that you will feel happy and fulfilled. But once you achieve it, the happiness comes and goes really quickly. And soon you have to get a new goal. And you think, if I just get that thing, then I'll be happy. And the cycle never ends. It's so strange as human beings that we do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, which, as we know, is the definition of insanity. So why do we do that? Well, some of it has to do with dopamine. They have recently discovered that dopamine is not the chemical of having, but dopamine is the chemical of desiring. We actually get pleasure from desiring things that we don't have. So there's nothing wrong with desire. When we desire something, dopamine floods our brains. But when we get the thing, we no longer desire. And so we have a little bit of a dopamine crash. And that's why we go look for another goal. So if we can recognize that there's actual value in savoring the desire, we can actually experience happiness in just the sheer desiring of things, not from a place of lack, like I don't have enough or I'll be happy later, but isn't it lovely to desire something? Otherwise, if we're just desiring the thing in the future that's going to make us happy in the future, we live in the land of later on. We falsely believe that happiness lives there in the land of later on. But the problem with that is that right now is all we've got. There is no later on. There's only now. And if we think we have to have something that we don't have right now in order to be happy, we are actually in the experience of the vibration and the frequency of lack. Now, when lack is present, that sends our nervous system into scarcity, sends our brain into a scarcity mentality, which often results in the experience of anxiety and fear. So when you say, when I just have that thing, I'll be happy, what you're saying is, I'm not enough. I don't have enough. My life is not enough. I'm in the experience of scarcity. Well, no wonder you're not happy. So what do we do about it? There's another way to flood your brain with pleasurable chemicals. And that way is appreciation. Appreciation, and I'm going to make a distinction here from gratitude. They're similar, but I make the distinction in this way. That gratitude is more of a mindset. Like I have a grateful heart, a grateful mind. I'm thankful to people around me. But appreciation is an action. Appreciation is actively seeking gratitude and expressing that gratitude in the world as a way of being. So when it said 90% of our happiness is like your actions, your behaviors, and your mindset, like, this is massive. And your mindset and your behaviors can influence your genetics. If we are following along with all the new research on epigenetics, we can impact the gene keys, that the genes that are activated or not activated. So having a mindset of gratitude, but then being in the behavior of appreciation, actually magnifies, intensifies our sense of happiness. When I'm appreciating something, happiness arises. It's not something I can get or do. It arises from the act of appreciation. And yet, we chase. It's the paradox of pursuit. The grass is greener. I lack something now, but the more we chase happiness, the more we chase happiness directly, the more elusive it actually becomes. When we make happiness the ultimate goal, it actually slips through our fingers because we're constantly setting new benchmarks for it. The pursuit is what keeps us trapped in a cycle of seeking and never actually being satisfied. Even after people reach a comfortable income level, and a few years ago it was $50,000, now they say $75,000 is around the benchmark per year. More money per year does not significantly increase their overall sense of happiness. $75,000 is the benchmark. So you could make that much money and then think that, if I have $1 million, I'm going to be happier. But when they measure the happiness of people at 75,000 and people at $1 million, it's not much different. Lower than that, we're talking about survival. That can certainly decrease a person's happiness because they are truly experiencing poverty and scarcity. But more money doesn't always mean more joy. We all know stories about people who have won the lottery. I think they make lots of reality programs about this. And eventually they wind up destitute and their families are in shambles. Nobody talks to anyone anymore. Or the billionaire who's on his 5th marriage and he has all the material possessions and status, but it keeps fading quickly. So he's got to keep changing everything. I have clients who are constantly chasing achievements. They get more degrees, they win more races, get more medals, they achieve incredible things, but they're constantly unsuccessful in capturing any sense of lasting happiness. Why? Because those achievements are most often driven by what other people think they should be doing, what other people have told them is valuable in life, what society has rewarded them for in terms of belonging or validation or appreciation. Like, dad was a doctor, so you should be a doctor, or buy a house because it's the responsible thing to do, and on and on. Most of us are living lives that reflect the values of the people that we were in relationship with growing up. We absorb those values as being good and right, and we look at the world through that lens, and we don't always question Is that true for me? Is that what matters most to me? And the reason we don't question it, folks, is because we actually value belonging often more than we value thriving. We're so afraid of rejection or being shunned or people telling us that we're unusual or stupid or whatever it is by going against the grain that we will sacrifice parts of ourselves to belong. But the cost of that sacrifice is great. The cost of that sacrifice is happiness and exhaustion. If you are getting your esteem based on your achievements, you're only as good as your last achievement and you got to go achieve something else again. So chasing happiness through things or achievements that aren't aligned with what matters most to you is like trying to catch a butterfly in your hands. The more you run after it, the more it flutters away. But if you sit still and you allow life to unfold, maybe that butterfly will land on you. Happiness often arises when we stop chasing it and focus on something way deeper, which is what's true for me. What feels aligned with me? What's my true north? What lights me up? What compels me? What makes me feel passionate about life? In the yogic teachings, there is a principle in the niyamas. Niyama means observance, the way that we are with ourselves. And one of the principles is santosha, which means contentment. And contentment, it said, comes from appreciating and being grateful for what we have in the present moment. Now, I believe we can be content and still crave adventure because we can be content and perpetually hungry for life, perpetually thirsty for life, perpetually excited about opportunities. But that doesn't mean we're not grateful for what we have now or there's some sense of lack from right now. So I think true santosha or true contentment is that ability to bridge both worlds, to say, I am so deeply grateful. I have so much appreciation. And I know the grass is not greener over there. And I'm excited to experience all that life has to offer. Did you know that research actually shows that people with a sense of purpose are 42% more likely to report being happy than those who don't feel a strong purpose? Finding contentment in purpose helps us to transcend the constant need for external validation. So I had this client a long time ago, and despite all he was very wealthy, had a lot of material success, owned several businesses. He started by running his father's business, and he was just chronically miserable. And it was this kind of low-grade, grumbling, depressive feeling around him. And he was always looking at the distance between where he was and where he hadn't gone yet. And he just had to get there. And when he got to that place, then he could settle down and things would be better and he could be happy. But, his marriage had fallen apart. His kids didn't talk to him. His employees thought he was an asshole. His life was not great despite outward appearances. And so I asked him, do you know where there is? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you're trying to get somewhere. Where is that there? How do you know when you've arrived? And he was like, I don't know. What are you talking about? Like, we just achieve all our lives. And I'm like, okay, but none of these achievements have made you happy. So which one do you think will make you happy? He looked at me like I had three heads. And I said, okay, well, let's try this in a different way. These achievements that you're making, these goals, whose goals are they? And he's like, what do you mean? These are my goals that I set for my company. And I said, well, try again. Whose approval are you trying to gain by achieving these things? He's like, no one. I do this. And I said, okay, then whose rejection do you fear the most? And he actually thought about that one for a moment. And he said, well, truthfully, my dad always said I'd never make anything out of my life. And I guess I've been out to prove him wrong by being more successful running his business than he ever was. That was like mind blowing. He sacrificed everything that he kind of wanted to do just to prove to his dad that he wasn't worthless. Now, this is a man who's in his late 50s, who has now got a broken marriage, probably eating antacids like they're going out of style. He's stressed, miserable, not a nice man to be around for most people, all because he had to prove something to his father. So when I asked him what he would be doing with his life, if he stopped competing for his dad's love, and if he had just followed his own heart and not worried about that, and you know what he said? He said he always wanted to be a fishing guide and spend time in nature and lead a really quiet, simple life. This is a man who had 17 cars, my friends. That's not a simple life. Just managing insurance for 17 cars is complicated. Now, every time he went to work for these goals that were not aligned with his heart, with his inner knowing, he was like assassinating his inner wisdom, right? And he just ignored his true north. And the cost was he had to trade his happiness to do that. And I wish I could tell you that he quit his job and started a fishing business, but he didn't. He carried on. But what we were able to do was this. He had never stopped to look back at everything he's accomplished and really appreciate the way he's able to help people now if he wants to. All the obstacles he's overcome despite what he felt were his shortcomings. And in taking time to appreciate, he could slow down and feel like, whoa, I can catch my breath. Maybe I've done enough. Maybe I am enough. He continues to run those businesses, but he does them differently. And he's become softer and kinder, and his relationships are improving because he's recognized that actually what matters to him is peace. So he's doing this business in a new way, in a more peaceful way. So appreciation is an access point to the experience of happiness, right? Appreciation for what we've done, what we have, who we are, who others are for us. Happiness can arise just from that contemplation of appreciation. Isn't that beautiful? Like, I just love to think about it. It's right here. It's not in the future. It's right here. Now, alignment again is sort of the second way. If we're out of alignment, we're very likely to be unhappy. Now, I know this because I ended up, my life took a very sharp turn in a direction I didn't expect it to go. I had planned on going to university, getting a degree, all of that. And then when my marriage ended violently, I was suddenly a single mom with a toddler, and I needed to go back to school for a short course to get a job that could support me and my son. I took a job with a medical lab in my community. And, you know, it was a decent job. It supported me and my son, but I didn't really have any time or feel like I had any right to look at what would fill my soul at that time. I needed to fill my son's supper plate. And the job paid my bills and it was a decent way to raise my family, but I was never particularly happy there. I was always felt this like dissatisfaction. I didn't like the way things were run. There was a lot of low level unhappiness around me. And I was always planning my next vacation or another dinner party or another adventure or a kid's party because I was chasing happiness somewhere else. And those things were fun, but they were fleeting. And I was constantly living in the land of later on. Like, when I get here, I'll be happy. When I do this, I'll be happy. But after 19 years, it was so obvious to me that this was not my passion. It was not my pursuit. And I had like 7 weeks a year holidays. I made okay money. I had a lot of benefits. And I'd been teaching yoga part-time for years, but I wanted to spend more time with my youngest son. He was 16 at the time, and he was the only one left at home. And I'd given a lot of time to his brother through his addiction, and I just wanted to have some more time with him. And I wanted to expand my love for yoga and share my love for yoga with more people. And I wanted to create more impact and more freedom. and live a life that I loved. So I decided I was going to leave my job and start a small yoga studio in my basement. And when I told people that I was going to quit my job to open a little yoga studio, 90% of them said I was nuts. They asked me if I was scared. What are you going to do about benefits? But yeah, damn right I was scared. But you know what? There was something in me that had the courage to follow my heart because I thought about the consequences of not following my heart. I just thought about being there for another 20 years and what my life would look like. And I couldn't risk that. So when I was in a class teaching yoga, I was often in flow state, a flow state, like flow state, immersed in something. And happiness often arises when we're immersed in something that we're so invested in, that we love so much, meaningful activities. Not when we're focused on, I'm going to teach class because I want to be happy. It's like, no, I feel alive. I'm being of service. I'm creating impact. I'm honing and expanding my skills. I'm sharing in new ways. And happiness would arise from the action of aligning myself with my values. So lots of us lose track of time when we're doing things we love. You're writing a book, or you're painting something, or making music, or maybe there's a project at work that's very aligned for you and you lose all track of time. Happiness is a byproduct of doing that thing we love, not the goal itself. People who regularly experience flow state, like doing things that put them in flow, are 3 times more likely to feel happy than those who don't. So the more time you spend doing the things you love that are aligned with your soul, the more often happiness has an opportunity to arise. It doesn't mean you have to quit your job, but maybe you're passionate about playing the guitar and you haven't picked it up in 10 years. Why not dust it off and spend some time doing something that aligns with your heart and soul? Flow state is like sailing with the wind at your back. You don't have to think about where you're going because the wind just guides you, and it makes the journey very enjoyable. And then when the journey's happening, happiness arises. You're just moving with the current of life. The key to lasting happiness is living in alignment with our values and purpose, and then adding a healthy dose of the action of appreciation for where we've been, how far we've come, where we are, what we have. True happiness is a byproduct of living in harmony with our authentic selves. When our actions reflect our deepest values and purpose, when we live this way, we experience a sustainable, deeper form of happiness, a contentment with our lives. I want to share something else about this with you, because when everybody told me I was crazy for leaving my job, I had one person who didn't, and that was my dad. And he said, everyone's going to tell you you're crazy, but the world needs more people who follow their heart. You go out there and you kill it, honey, and I got your back if you need help. And that was all I need, like an encourager. I needed an encourager, and my dad was that encourager for me. And my dad was someone who followed his passions his whole life. And that brought me so much happiness to feel that support. And that leads me to the third thing. So we got alignment with values, we've got appreciation, but then studies have found that close relationships where we feel supported and seen and heard, close relationships more than external success or achievements, are the strongest predictors of happiness. In the Harvard study of adult development, they found that people who are most satisfied with their relationships at age 50 were the healthiest and happiest at age 80. I've said this for eons, that the state of your relationships is directly related to your sense of happiness. If your relationships are in shambles, you could be living your purpose and miserable. So when we combine these three aspects, taking care of our relationships, being willing to confront ourselves and shed old parts of ourselves so we can communicate better, we can lose our reactivity, we learn to be vulnerable and connect more deeply with others, then we align our actions with our values, what matters most to me, and we add on appreciation. Guess what, folks? You might just find yourself living a happier life. I hope that this has given you some food for thought today, some things to think about. There may be some places where you have been out of alignment, or places where you're not practicing appreciation, or some low vibration people in your life that are discouragers, not encouragers, that you could shift your environment. Happiness is within your control because happiness comes from within you. You have the power. And I hope that you take this little bit of intel that I've shared with you today and contemplate it, ponder it, and ask yourself, what could I bring forth? What could I let go of? Maybe what new mindset could I adopt that's going to lead me to feeling more happy right now? Because right now is all you've got. We've only got this one wild and precious life. And my wish for you is that you live it authentically and happy as often as is humanly possible. If you are interested in any of our programs at Shift Labs or working one-on-one with me, check out pamrader.com or shiftlabs.ca for more information. I've got group coaching programs, one-to-one coaching, coaching certification programs, and a relationship breakthrough program. So if you want to elevate the impact you make in your life and you would like to help others, perhaps that's in alignment for you, check out our programs. I'd love to see you there. Until next time.